My friends, we have big news from Haiti. Over the past several months, you've probably seen several of the videos that I've made talking about what has been going on in Haiti, how it has descended into complete and utter chaos, and the things that are being done in order to try and fix it, and the gang war that is taking place between the government and, well, the actual gangs. Well, the news is a new government has finally formed as the nation struggles to restore order, and also that Kenyan police might finally be arriving. The new Haitian cabinet completely replaces all the ministers from the government of former Prime Minister Ariel, who was forced to step down earlier this year by gangs which still now control large parts of Haiti. The announcement of the new cabinet comes 2 weeks after the country's Transitional Government Council appointed Gary Kenyan as interim prime minister. This man would also take on the role of interior minister according to the decree, which was published in Haiti's official gazette. The formation of some kind of cabinet in Haiti is a sign that efforts are being made to try to bring back some political stability to the nation, one that has been racked by violence and uncertainty for many months, at least in its most severe form, and at least some degree of violence and uncertainty for many, many years. The Transitional Council would appoint people to all key cabinet positions and their ministers, as a spokeswoman would confirm. And this is honestly some great news, but while some Haitians will be encouraged by these first steps towards a degree of normalcy, others remain deeply worried about the scale of the new task that is in front of the new cabinet, and whether or not they will actually be able to fix things. As it still stands, for those of you who've been watching my videos, gangs still control most of the capital, Port-au-Prince, and gang leaders refuse to recognize the legitimacy of the interim council, or really any kind of transitional leadership. In fact, the majority of them want complete amnesty from their crimes and a place in the new government. What we're talking about is something that is almost similar to warlord China, in which all these varying different factions are struggling to take over the country, and they all want a voice no matter what their crimes are. The hope was that this last year, a UN-backed security force, something that was to be led by Kenya, would be able to go in and boost the struggling Haitian police. But as it stands, it has not yet been deployed. This planned deployment of around 1,000 Kenyan police officers to try and restore order is something that simply has not materialized. Although Kenyan President William Ruto did reiterate his support for the plan in an interview this past month. But more on that in a bit, because there are some developments in that regard. For those of you who have not seen what it is that I have talked about so far, a little bit of context. Mr. Henry, the former leader of Haiti, had agreed to step down in March after armed gangs blocked his return to the country from Kenya, where he had gone for talks with President Ruto. Gangs would capitalize on the power vacuum left by the Prime Minister's exit, and from there they would expand their control over swaths of the country, which has effectively become lawless in many places, and in particular the capital. The situation that we're talking about in this nation, in Haiti, is something that is described as cataclysmic by the United Nations in a report that was published this past month. At the time that this report came out, approximately 1,500 people had been killed and 800 people injured in just the first 3 months of 2024. The report would detail the absolutely harrowing practices of the gangs, which are accused of using extreme violence and abuse of many different varieties as a means of punishment, as well as control over the population and individual territories that they hold sway in. Because of this degree of gang control, aid groups have reported extreme difficulties in getting any kind of food and water into the capital, warning that literally millions of people are unable to find sustenance, with many on the verge of famine. After many months of violence within Haiti, the humanitarian situation remains critical for thousands of people. The World Health Organization notes that insecurity continues to affect people's access to healthcare, notably in Port-au-Prince in the metropolitan area, as well as the Artibonite department, where tens of schools remain closed or have seen their programs severely disrupted. A major consequence of the insecurity that we're talking about here is a drastic increase in the cost of food. The World Food Program has noted that the cost of food would rise by 27% between January of 2024 and May of 2024, meaning that in a country where the majority of people are already living below the poverty line, this means that families with already meager funds now have to spend even more of that money on food. As for why this is the case, it is due to many months of difficulties with importing products. The majority of things in Haiti have to specifically be imported, and thus the gangs that have taken control of the airport, of just shipping ports, of literally anything you can think of, all of these mean that supplies that are there in the country become significantly harder to come by. In the Port-au-Prince region, 61% of households have reported a significant reduction in their main source of income, including 46% who have suffered a reduction of more than half of their income. Employment is next to impossible to come by, as nowhere is safe, and those that are able to find employment simply cannot get paid, either due to a lack of funds in the first place from the business, or because there is anyone else out there who will do a job for cheaper, as there is infinite numbers of people that need work. In addition, 4 out of 5 households have now had to adopt negative strategies in order to cope with the lack of food, including reducing the number of meals per day and limiting adult consumption in order to allow children to be able to eat. Of course, my friends, everything that I'm talking about here at this point, this is all feeding off of what we have already talked about, but not everything with these updates are doom and gloom. I have gone in and explained extensively as to how it is that we have gotten where we are here today. And the initial part of this video with news from the new government is good news. But even before that, more aid is now actually able to get into the country than before, thanks to the reopening of airports. Since I made my last video talking about this, Haiti's main international airport in Port-au-Prince has reopened, this being nearly 3 months after it was forced to shut down due to deadly gang-related violence and direct attacks upon it. A single commercial flight would end up leaving the capital and later would land in Miami, Florida. More flights were then set to come later in May. Haiti's authorities would hope that much more basic needed supplies, such as medicine, would be able to start arriving. Simultaneously, foreigners who had been trapped in the country would finally be able to start leaving. As an example of one of these flights, a humanitarian cargo flight operated by the United Nations Humanitarian Air Service would land at Port-au-Prince on the 30th of May. This flight would carry around 15 tons of medicines and medical supplies to support UNICEF as well as WHO operations. This operation is set to continue for as long as insecurity continues to limit people's access to healthcare. This was, mind you, the first time in 3 months that a cargo flight had been chartered by the United Nations and managed to land in the capital. As supplies were now able to come in, on the 30th of May, the Haitian authorities would inaugurate the National Emergency Operations Center in Port-au-Prince. This center would be an essential facility for coordinating disaster preparedness as well as management. What we're talking about here is extremely important, as the inauguration of this thing comes at a time when forecasts indicate that the 2024 hurricane season, which started earlier this month on the 1st of June, is set to be a very difficult one, at least as it so far seems, with an increase compared with 2023 of 25 major climatic phenomena. This would include 12 hurricanes, 7 of which are expected to exceed Category 3. The Ministry of Health is mobilizing all of its health partners to try and strengthen preparations in order to make sure that they have an effective, coordinated response. And for those of you who are watching this right now, it may seem like an odd thing to bring up when we are talking about geopolitics, but I assure you this is extremely important. For anyone who has seen any of my previous videos on Haiti, you would understand that when it comes to natural disasters, these play key parts in why Haiti is the way that it is today. I'm not going to go into that in extensive details, but go back and watch my previous videos and you will see all the damage that happened to the country and the state that specifically allowed this to happen in previous years. Considering the state of the country as it is, major natural disasters could spell actual doom for the state. But anyway, all of this brings us into June. Mr. Kenyan was sworn in on the 3rd of June 2024. Shortly afterwards, he ended up being hospitalized on the 8th of June for reasons that would remain undisclosed. But sources from within the government would state to the media that his condition was caused by an asthma attack. This really is not good at a time when 60% of the hospitals in Haiti have already shut down, but luckily he was released after only a night of treatment. Kenyan's cabinet was then sworn in on the 12th of June, with him being appointed as the Minister of Interior and Territorial Communities. Immediately, this government was set to get to work, and Kenyan would go on to attend a ceremony with over 400 new officers graduating from the police academy, with the expectation that they would be able to help curb gang violence in the state. At the time that he would attend this ceremony, he would remind the graduates that the people of Haiti specifically depend on their dedication to combat insecurity, saying, and I quote, "You need to know that you are not alone. You are the hope of the population at this crucial moment in our history, which it really is. At the point that I am making this video, as I have previously said, gangs still control 90% of the capital, but that violence is beginning to spread further and further outside of the capital. Earlier this month, armed gangs would attack families in Territorial, which is a village in northern Haiti, forcing more than 1,000 people to flee from their homes to find safer areas. According to a report that was published by the National Network for Defense of Human Rights on June 12th, between October 28th of 2021 and June 9th of 2024, approximately 120 police officers had been killed by gangs, which averaged 4 deaths per month compared to 3 in previous years. Mind you, is still very high, as they were already having to deal with the gangs, but that has only become worse. The network would also report 55 armed attacks on police infrastructure between November 15th of 2021 and June 9th of 2024, under the leadership of Elbe, the chief of police in Haiti. One of the more recent police assassinations that we could talk about here would occur on June 9th, when 3 agents of the Temporary Anti-Gang Unit, or UTAG, were ambushed and killed by the gang led by Jimmy Barbecue Cherizer in Delmas 18, a populated area in the Haitian capital's northeastern suburb. I've talked about barbecue before, and if you want more details on that, again, you're gonna have to check out a previous video. After this event would take place, it would prompt renewed calls for Elbe to resign from his position as police chief, as things seem to only be getting worse. The conflict that we are talking about here is not a subdued one. It is quite literally open warfare. Now, on this channel, I have not given many details about many of the attacks. I have mentioned some details, but not many, and so now I'm going to give you an idea of what has been happening across the country, with an incident that would happen just this past week on June 14th and 15th. In one recent event, a gang attack in rural Haiti would turn into an absolute bloodbath, which would leave death and destruction everywhere. More than a dozen homes in Grand Plain were set ablaze, and at least 11 people were killed in the community and nearby Lagon in Haiti's Artibonite Valley. Heavily armed men would burst through on 10 motorcycles into a small rural community of thatched roof houses that are inside Haiti's upper rice-growing Artibonite region. The mission that these gangs had going to this rural outside village is to try and kidnap a local teacher in Lagon. The problem ended up arising that instead of kidnapping this individual, the incident in the rural communities of Lagon and Grand Plain very quickly descended into a chaotic bloodbath after residents tried to fight back. In places within the capital where vigilante groups have formed up and people have armed themselves with machetes and sometimes rudimentary firearms, this has gone better. But in this case, residents were forced to fight with their bare hands and rocks, as they did not have access to any of these things. They also tried to set up barricades in order to block the motorcycles and stop the abduction, but it didn't work. When the barricades failed, they instead tried to throw rocks, which would drive the bandits into a deadly rampage. By the time that the gang members had finished with their work, more than a dozen homes had been set ablaze and at least 11 people killed, according to the mayor of the nearby commune of Grossmorn. Among the dead was the teacher that had been the target of this operation in the first place. Unable to take him on the back of their bikes, what the gang members instead did was chop him up with machetes. He was not the only one who would pass, as I'm afraid. In addition to him, among the dead were a pregnant woman, a pastor, and a deacon. The gang orchestrated rampage that would unfold on June 14th and 15th, more than 2 hours north of Haiti's capital, illustrates what it is that I am talking about here, in that this is not just violence of the capital. It is engulfing the entire country, and it is slowly growing outwards. Haitians fleeing the kidnappings and violence in Port-au-Prince are now finding themselves in positions where they have to fend for themselves, with complete absence of police patrols and outside help, as the police are really only trying to contain things within the capital, and even then are failing. As a result of that, change has been demanded amongst the police, and that is precisely what has happened, which leads me to another one of the updates. A former national police chief, who was once fired over his inability to stop the tide of armed gang violence, has now actually been tasked once again to lead the country's police force. The man that we're talking about here is Ramon Nomil, the man who had served as acting director of the Haitian National Police for 15 months before he was fired by former President Jovenel Moise in November of 2020. Only this last week, this man was officially named back to his old job by the country's new transitional government. As Gary Conil, the new prime minister, would say, quote, "We believe the moment has arrived for us to give the police a new breath, a new energy to reconcile the police and the population." The decision to change the police's leadership, he said, was made with members of the Transitional Presidential Council. Keneal would also say that the council has yet to discuss with Normil, who until recently had been assigned to Haiti's embassy in Washington, D.C., how exactly they were going to tackle the country's worsening violence, but that would happen soon. I don't think that I mentioned this guy in any of my previous videos, but correct me in the comments section if I'm wrong, but the first time that Normil was police chief, it was at the time where the last of the United Nations peacekeeping troops that had been sent in after the deadly earthquake in 2010 had just left. Under Normil, the police would struggle to restore calm to Haiti, and growing discontent would lead to chaos in the streets of Port-au-Prince as rogue cops would carry out violent attacks and protests. In one infamous incident that I can talk about in this situation, police and members of the Haitian military ended up engaging in a violent confrontation inside of the capital. And yes, for those of you who are confused, who are wondering what it is that I'm talking about, heavily armed Haitian police officers marched into Port-au-Prince's main public square in order to protest their low pay and the government's spending priorities back in the year 2020. When this happened, soldiers in the newly mobilized Haitian armed forces very quickly deployed and positioned themselves atop a tower that was overlooking the plaza. What happened next is insane and unthinkable for many modern nations. Haiti's two armed institutions faced off in a 6-hour gun battle that ended up leaving a soldier as well as a protester dead, with more than a dozen others, including police officers and 2 soldiers, wounded. The country had been tearing itself apart for years, and this was at the time that the previous guy, the one who's in charge now, was in charge. Anyway, the dismissal. The country at the time that we're talking about here saw a rise in gang-orchestrated kidnappings, in massacres, in high-profile assassinations, some of which even implicated police officers as being part of them in the first place. And so, unable to rein in the growing terror, Normil would come under fire for failing to arrest the person that we previously mentioned, Jimmy Barbecue Chedizere, who was then at the time a rising gang leader accused of carrying out a gruesome massacre in Port-au-Prince's La Saline neighborhood. And so it was that he was dismissed. He could not do his job. But now he is back, and the latest change in leadership at the helm of the Haitian National Police comes as this new transitional government is trying to take charge in the midst of growing deadly gang violence that, at this point, has already killed or injured more than 2,500 people this year and uprooted more than 100,000 people from their homes. It also comes at a time that the United States and Kenya finalize preparations for the arrival of a multinational security support mission to try and help the Haitian police stabilize the country in wake of coming elections. So far, 7 nations, including Kenya, have notified the UN that they will field officers for the security mission, which was approved by the Security Council in October, but has over the past several months, as you have seen on this channel, faced repeated legal and financial delays. As an example of this, a UN trust fund for the force has only $21 million so far. And in addition to this, there has only been one disbursement of $1.2 million to reimburse training costs for the first group of Kenyan police officers. That, in turn, brings us to our final update, one that I hope will be the final one before the arrival of said force. From Washington, D.C., on June 20th, the Biden administration would announce that it was going to award nearly $110 million in security and police assistance to Haiti, a move that would bypass months-long holds that had been put in place on the funds by Republican lawmakers. Per the wording of the official statement, Secretary of State Antony Blinken would make the decision following more than 100 briefings to Congress by the State Department, and that the Biden administration remained committed to working in, quote, close consultation with that body. As officials would say about the matter, quote, the security situation in Haiti remains untenable due to violence perpetrated by violent gangs, and the people of Haiti cannot wait. The funds include $95 million for security mission support and $15 million to the Haitian National Police to counter gang violence. Of course, when we talk about this and specifically bypassing things legally, Republicans are naturally not very happy. As Senator Jim Risch, who is the top Republican on the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, would say in a statement, quote, the Biden administration's choice to override the hold I had placed on U.S. taxpayer funding for the ill-conceived Haiti MSS, Multinational Security Support Mission, is extremely disappointing. Risch and Representative Michael McCall, the Republican chairman of the House of Representatives Foreign Affairs Committee, would say in March that they had to put on holds on funds to Haiti because they needed a lot more details before approving them. I can already see what is going to be happening right now in the comment section, where people are going to be trying to point political fingers in either direction, but one has to understand when talking about this issue is that it's not clean cut, and that is something that I hope people understand from everything that I talk about when I make these videos. In both Haiti and Kenya, corruption within the police and government are rampant. Thus, the disbursement of large amounts of funds can be seen as extremely risky. Whether or not the majority of it even ends up in the right hands or is used for the right purposes in the first place is anyone's guess. Honestly, when talking about that, I will likely need to do a full video on Kenya and its own battles with corruption, just as I did Vietnam and Malaysia. But either way, we can really only hope for the best, as the police force may finally be arriving then. As per the time that I'm recording this video right now on June 23rd, I had to stop and put in an update that an announcement would come out today saying that a Kenyan force was leaving for Haiti on June 25th. That is this coming Tuesday. This force would lead a UN-backed mission to tackle gang violence, despite the fact that there have been many court challenges against it. As an Interior Ministry official would say on condition of anonymity in Kenya, the departure is this week on Tuesday. Preparations are set for the team to depart. We already have 2 advanced teams that left, one last week and one yesterday. This is big news because the UN Security Council resolution back in October had approved the mission, but a Kenyan court in January had delayed the deployment. It said at the time that the Kenyan government had no actual authority to send police officers abroad without a prior agreement. The government then went and secured that agreement back in March, but a opposition party in Kenya would go and file fresh lawsuits to try and block it. Aside from Kenya, other countries that have also expressed willingness to join the mission include Benin, the Bahamas, Bangladesh, Barbados, and Chad. People may wonder at this point where the United States fits in, and the answer is in funding and logistical support. As it stands, the United States is not going to be putting boots on the ground. As for what is actually going to happen, well, we will see this coming week. Because in the end, we cannot predict the future in this channel. We can only tell stories of the past and how it is that we got here to today. Hopefully, a week from now, a month from now, however long it takes, we'll be telling a different story for how it is that Haiti managed to stabilize itself. And with that, we are going to go ahead and end this video. Thank you all for watching. This has been Stakuyi with the History of Everything podcast YouTube channel. I ask that you like, comment, subscribe, and let me know in the comment section below what other types of videos you would like to see. With everything that has been happening in this last week, the amount of things that I have stockpiled to make videos on is immense. So I really do hope that you'll stick around with me, and I will see you next time. Goodbye, my friends.